Right now, Claude is leading the way for AI automation architecture. I gave Claude a project pack and a brand, and he created a full client pitch ready to export. I didn't design a single slide, but that was just one workflow. It talks straight to Rhino and Revit, modeling from a single instruction. It writes prompts, generates images and videos right in a chat. It can even read tender packs and hand back summaries. It's a powerful tool, and it can be used for everyday workflows all the way to building your own custom apps. So let's jump in. Claude is Anthropic's AI assistant. At the basic level, you can do writing, analysis, and research. But if you're only using as a prompt box, you're only using about 10% of it. For architects, the value shows up when you stop asking simple questions and start running complete workflows in it. So when you start feeding in project documents, standards, and your studio's way of thinking, Claude is basically an ecosystem. There are models, projects, skills, connections, designs, and Claude Code. I'll be going through each one with an example straight from architectural viewpoint. Before we jump into the workflows, I'll go into the settings to set up custom instructions. Here you can set your role, tone, audience, and format all at once. This will allow you to get the answers tailored to your specific needs. You'll burn fewer tokens, as you don't have to explain yourself each time, and your answers will be customized to what you need. So for example, here's mine. This is quite computationally heavy, and I write all the tools I normally use, and I explain that I understand technical terminology. But for example, if you're a senior architect and not very technical, you can ask it to explain things in simple terms and no jargon. So it's the same tool, but two completely different assistants then. So I'll keep the first one, and you'll see how it will affect all my answers in the future. And while we are here, go down to memory right here at the bottom, and be sure to switch on generate memory from chats and search and reference chats. That way, Claude can take into account all your previous conversations and make a more concise answer. Starting with the very basics, you still can use Claude just as a chat. But to get a stronger answer, which model you choose matters. You have to think about speed versus reasoning and also the costs. These models are always changing, but here's the current summary. For most architects, Sonnet is an everyday model, Opus when quality of thinking matters more than speed, and Fable will sit right at the top for the most demanding work. For this video, I'll be using Opus for most of the complex workflows when I need the thinking. For a simple question like what is embodied carbon in buildings, I can use a model like Sonnet, and it will use less tokens. And if you remember, in the instructions in the memory, I added in some technical software that I used, and it has actually brought it up here in the chat. I would also recommend going for at least a pro account, so you have access to all the features and you don't keep hitting limits. But you still can get a lot done with the free one if you're just trying it out. Structured prompting. Most people write one long messy sentence and hope for the best. The value is in the structure and telling the model what to change, what to protect, and having a conversation with it. For example, let's build a structured image generation prompt for Nano Banana, which is Google's Gemini image model. So instead of me guessing the format, I can get Claude to interview me. A good strategy for this is to give Claude a role first. So here I've given it the job that it is a prompt engineer for Nano Banana prompts. And then I will give it a list of questions to interview me with. This way, whatever prompt I add in, it will ask me to elaborate through a list of questions, and the answers will be much more accurate. So first, it has asked me to drop in my rough idea or image. So I asked for a flagship fashion store exterior in Omotesando. And now it has listed me out those questions to elaborate on which areas I want. So I can select from the default answers, or I can insert some new values such as the aspect ratio. And then I have this perfectly formatted prompt, which I could then paste into any image generator and have this amazing image. I'll be showing you later how you can actually generate this directly in Claude. Let's say you want to repeat this many times. This is where skills come in. This allows you to repeat this task without typing the whole prompt again. So a skill teaches Claude how to perform a task in the same way over and over again and get a similar output. If you go to Settings and down to Skills, you'll see where your skills can be stored. By default, there's already one skill for actually making skills. If you click this, it will give a long description that when you trigger this skill using the word make a skill, it will help create one. The best way to show you how this works is by doing one. So back in the chat, let's make a skill based on our previous example of the prompt generator. So if we're happy with this, we can simply type in and ask, turn this into a skill. Claude will review it and categorize all the parts, and this will give you a summary of the outputs. So you can check this, and if happy, you can activate and save it, and it will appear under your settings and skills. To activate this, you'll have to use the keyword or phrases which was set up in the skills. So let's give it a test. So I'll trigger it, saying create a Gemini image prompt, and write the sentence for a contemporary open plan living interior, or whichever theme you want. And now it will go through the same process of asking me questions to elaborate which parts I want. And then in the end, it will give me the complete prompt, which I can paste and generate a new image. Here's another practical example of converting an image of a timetable or schedule into a fully editable Excel sheet. Claude you can actually directly connect to many software, but it is also fully capable of outputting many formats such as PowerPoint and Excel directly here. So you can see that from this one image, it has created this very clean file with all the columns and titles and even the color formatting. But let's say I want to repeat this again. I can make this into a skill. So I'll ask to package it up, save it, and I can repeat it with any image. Since we have started uploading details and documents, it is important to cover privacy and training before you push on. In the settings under privacy, you can toggle whether this is used for training, so you can turn it off. However, you still need to read the policies because these often change, and they can still hold on to your data for a certain amount of time. Another option is to press this ghost button on the top, which is like incognito mode. However, it turns off Claude's memories and all previous chats, which is a powerful feature, so you don't want to leave that out. Also, most businesses will have an enterprise or Teams account, which allows users to keep their memory, not have data trained on, and has data agreements. But as a rule of thumb, check your organization's AI policies and be sure to use the correct commercial accounts when available, and avoid uploading any unnecessary confidential information. Now let's start working with other documents. I'll move from a single prompt to a project over here. Project is more like a persistent workspace where Claude can keep the team's recurring context in one place. For this demo, I'll create a project for a draft bid request summarizer. The idea is to turn a new bid request into a short internal summary so that the team can quickly understand, instead of asking everybody to read the full tender pack first. I will select a folder with some sample documents, which I'll use an example of affordable housing scheme with references and details. I'll first begin by asking to create a bid request summarizer project and use the uploaded documents. What's important next is to define the structure of what you want summarized, and especially at the bottom to add some guardrails, so it does not make up any details and only uses what is actually in the document. And once it is finished thinking, it will give you an at-glance summary, opportunities at a high level, and even a nice timetable with a program and structures, scope deliverable, and very importantly at the end, risks and potential misses. I also included a standard rate table, so it even drafted some rates that I suggest based on the bid. And the last section is also very helpful, as it has flagged what information is still needed and may need to be requested. If you want to circulate this to the rest of the team, you could save it as a formatted Word document and send that around to the teams. Let's take a look at other chat options. Here you can see a variety of different buttons. One very useful one is a deep research. This comes useful when you want more than just quick answers, but structured architectural investigations across many searches and many sources. For the topic, I will choose to research how AI and digital twins can support climate-responsive master planning. So we'll look at using live urban data, environment simulation, and mobility patterns. This is very useful because it shows a different kind of value, and it gives all the sources and structures for you. One thing to note is that it can take up to 15 minutes to run because it is searching the internet and structuring all the answers. However, when it is complete, you can see the clear and meaningful research and the structure of all the sources so you can dig deeper and confirm how these work. This is also a great way to do further market research across the internet and see what's currently going on. Claude itself doesn't generate images, videos, or 3D, but it can connect to apps that do. This is done using MCP and connectors. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, It is basically a standard that lets AI assistants like Claude securely connect to external tools and apps and take action beyond the simple chat. So for architects, this is powerful because it can connect to tools like Rhino, SketchUp, Revit, Blender, and much more. Let's take the case of Rhino. The developers have an official MCP on their website. You can follow the instructions to download the connector, and then go to Settings, Extensions, Advanced Settings, and install the connector, which you can see I've already done. You then need to go over to Rhino in the Package Manager and search for the Rhino MCP platform to install that too. Once you've restarted, in the command bar, you can type MCP and see that's activated, and it will run on the local host. In Claude, you can ask to connect to the port number which was shown in Rhino, and it will confirm the connection. From here, you have access to all of the Rhino commands in the chat. You can edit models directly or generate ones. Here I'll drag in a generated image and ask to model this, adding appropriate layers. And you see all of the thinking in relation to layers, heights, categories, structures, planters, and so on. So it goes through an incredible amount of detail, depending which model you use. They also translate into 3D models very well. You can see how clean and organized the layers are. So this is where Claude becomes more than just a writing assistant, more of a collaborator. It's not just 3D modeling tools that you can connect to. You can connect to image and video generators with a similar technique. I'll be using OpenArt MCP because it is very simple to access and has all the latest image and video generation models with just one connector. If you go to the main website, you can find instructions here. You just need to copy the main OpenArt MCP URL, go to Settings in Claude, Connectors, Custom Connector, and paste in this link. I've already done it, so I'll go straight to the example. Let's take advantage of the prompt skill we made earlier and ask to make a prompt for an open plan interior. I'll just select the default answers to speed up the process. And at the end, you can ask to send this prompt directly to OpenArt MCP to generate the image, rather than copy and pasting it. And now we have a direct generation in the chat. This is very powerful as you can combine this with more complex processes and create a series of images and directly put them into a presentation, for example. Claude Design, an incredible, powerful tool for all sorts of layouts, presentations, and customization where design is important. It has a separate button here in the bottom left and its own window because there's such a huge amount of functionality available. This is where the workflow becomes client-facing. So instead of manually assembling the results into a deck, I can ask Claude to create a comparison sheet or presentation structure. I will show you the basics here. It is a good idea to start off with one of the templates, so I'll select slides, as I'll be creating a slide pitch deck for an architecture company. Then here is the all-powerful design system. This essentially is your brand, colors, styles, and so on. There are some basic templates here. I'll go for this industry style, where it is using some cool blue tones. However, if you have your own templates, color schemes, or logos, click this Create button here, and you can teach Claude to create a design system based on this, which is amazing as it can be reused on every design for consistency. Then just add in your information and documents that you want to base your pitch around. So here I'll add some demonstration images, project details, CVs, and so on. For my prompt, I'll ask to write a pitch deck for a client, and I'll add a structure to the presentation in terms of the sections I want and what materials to use, along with some guardrails. Then I will let it run. Based on all this info, Claude will structure specific questions to elaborate, which is amazing as it prevents Claude from creating wrong assumptions and it is more like a design partner. So here it is asking me about the audience, more about specific client requirements. I don't have any clients, so I'll make it more general one for now. But this is an excellent way if you do want to fine-tune a presentation to a client. You can then attach other information such as CVs if you have them. Since this is just a simple example, I'll skip through this and let Claude do its thing. Over a few minutes, you'll see dynamically how it thinks through each slide, and it will match up on screen with all the images you added in. It is blended in the style of my brand and content examples, which is incredible. Sometimes you will see mistakes, such as the white on the light grey background, which obviously does not work. You can manually click and change anything. But of course, in a much easier way, is to ask Claude to change this across all of the slides automatically. And there you go, entire document fixed. From here, you can export it as a PowerPoint document and continue on. Next to the chat button is CoWork. Claude CoWork is where Claude moves from chat into action on your computer. It will gain access to your folders and your computer directly, so you can make automatic changes. You can even schedule certain processes. Just be careful of the permissions. This is very useful in practical tasks like organizing folders, preparing files, creating logos, coordinating work. For example, you can ask Claude to schedule a weekly digest on architectural marketing or any relevant niche in your business. You can then have it saved directly to your drive and emailed to you as well. So I prompt, you are a research analyst for a UK architecture practice focused on residential mixed-use and bespoke homes. Produce an AI digest based on weekly updates. I've also added in sources that I like, such as Design, and then stated what kind of summary I want. It will then go through checking my connectors, as I need to connect to my Gmail, but I haven't done that yet, which I'll do at the end instead. And it will also go through the sources and ask for permissions to connect to these. At the end, it will give me a summary of the 3 articles with the sources and coverage notes. This could be customized more to focus on design than modern technology, but it is a great way to get quick weekly summaries. Next, it will allow you to schedule it for a date and time, and it can give you another summary and document. And from here, I can actually go to my settings and connectors and connect to Gmail. I can have this sent to me directly to the email every week, so very useful for automation. And finally, one of the most advanced capabilities for automation is Claude Code. This is useful when you want to build something more structured than a one-off answer, like a small app, dashboard, or script. You can do this directly in the chat here, but for most automation, it is done through a terminal, like Windows command prompt. It has no UI, as it is all text-based for efficiency and automation. There is some setup needed, which you can follow on the Claude official documents. It's mainly just pasting in this line to the command prompt and installing the packages. Then you can start Claude from your project directory. For this example, I will ask to build a simple architect's bubble diagram tool. So it will be a single web page for architects for early diagrams for space planning. You can enter a list of rooms and sizes and generate scaled bubbles. I recommend writing up this in a separate document so you can organize the steps and properly plan it out as you want. You can then paste it in, it will ask for permissions, and then you let it run for about 10 minutes. Now you have this app running locally, and it's fully interactive and editable. You can change the room schedule, sizes, move the bubbles around. The experience is very smooth, doesn't seem to have any bugs or issues, and this technique could be used for creating any small tool, such as fee estimations, brief checkers, parking lot sizes, or generating mood boards. Over the months, Claude has evolved to be valuable not because it can answer questions, but because it can sit across whole architectural workflows. For architects, this is an important shift as it moves from advice to action. Claude is not just helping you to think about work, it is starting to help you to do the work. I'll be making more videos focusing on MCPs and detailed workflows in the future, so be sure to check them out.